What's up and welcome back to another unboxing review with Gizmo Slip Tech. Today we have the Aorus 7, which is kind of like a budget-ish mid-range esports gaming laptop with a 360 hertz refresh rate display, 17.3-inch display, so a larger screen. Let's go ahead and take a look at the competition and a summary. So if you don't know about this is me and my team's 4,000 or basically all the gaming laptops that you can buy potentially in 2023. Got basically every laptop that money can buy on here. Over 319 different laptop listings updated daily with sales and whether it's in stock, whether you can order it. We got some basic benchmark data over here on the right for the CPU and the GPU. Some of the data over here is estimated. If it's rounded, that usually means it's estimated. And then of course, if you click on any of these, you can expand it, get pictures of whatever product you're looking at. Gigabyte Aorus 7, i5 12500H, RTX 4060, 16 gigs of DDR4, 3200 RAM. Depending on the quality of the RAM, could be pretty good for esports, but it's obviously not as fast as the new DDR5. At this price point, I don't think you can really complain about the RAM. 512 gig SSD and a full HD 360 hertz 100% sRGB display, at least according to the manufacturer rated spec. Alienware M18 is arguably the top dog. You can actually hit very high frame rates in those games, and this one has a 480 hertz refresh rate display. The Alienware M18 and the Alienware M16 both can be configured with a full HD plus, which means 16:10 aspect ratio, 480 hertz, 100% DCI-P3 color gamut display. And there is also Ryzen CPU option, so Ryzen 9 7945HX, which is an excellent CPU, or the i9-13900HX CPU, which is the Intel equivalent of the best CPU. Gigabyte Aorus 15. The Aorus 15 has the same i5 processor, RTX 4050, 8 gigs of RAM, which is not enough. You really need 6. 512 gig SSD, full HD 360 hertz display. So you get the same full HD 360 hertz display for $50 less. I don't think I'd really recommend this unless it goes on sale for say under $1,000, maybe $899 or maybe $950. But the Aorus 15 is much more portable than the Aorus 7 because it's a 15-inch chassis and it's also much thinner. Now the HP Victus 16 is another esports option. If you're after a QHD 240 hertz display with an RTX 4060, you get a Ryzen 7 7840HS, which should be a better CPU than the Aorus laptops or CPU oriented games, at least in theory. Maybe not single-threaded performance. Single-threaded performance might be very competitive. Maybe even the i5 would beat this Ryzen 7 in single-threaded performance, but in multi-core workloads like Warzone 2, I would expect this Victus 16 to do a little bit better. Now, the QHD 240 hertz display obviously should be a very good esports gaming display in theory. This one's only $1129, which makes it another very attractive option if you're in the esports focused category and you really want to have a QHD 240 hertz display. The Lenovo Legion Pro 5i. We've got an i7-13700HX, RTX 4060, 32 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, and a QHD 240 hertz 500 nits display. So a much brighter display. Should be rated for 100% sRGB. $1349 right now for the Legion Pro 5i. It is on sale. And this one has much better CPU performance per dollar and should be a better CPU for esports games. That said, the 4060 should be about the same power level as the Aorus 7. So in the GPU-bound esports games like Apex Legends, then we're probably looking at about the same levels of performance. But the fact that we have a full HD display in the Aorus 7, right? The Aorus 7 has a full HD display and it's not a full HD plus. So this means it's 1920 by 1080. It's just going to be an easier resolution to run, to hit higher refresh rates more often, and really crank out the FPS, getting you closer to that 360 hertz gaming experience if you're an esports player. You go with the Victus, it has about the same level of power in terms of graphics performance, but it has a QHD resolution, which is a much higher resolution, and it's really going to take a lot of your frames away if your target is high refresh rate gaming. So we have the MSI Pulse 15, you get an i7, and you get a QHD 165 hertz 100% DCI-P3 color gamut. So if you're an esports player that needs a higher color gamut display, then the Pulse 15 might be a good option to consider. The Asus Strix G17 has a Ryzen 9 7845HX processor with an RTX 4060, 16 gigs of DDR5, 4800, 1 terabyte SSD, and a QHD 240 Hz 100% DCI P3 color gamut display for $1399. So this one, an excellent CPU, an excellent quality display with high color gamut, but you're paying kind of a bit of a premium price for the 4060. $1,400 for a 4060. You're really, the premium price that you're paying here is for the higher quality color gamut display, which some people are gonna really love. And then of course, the little bit higher end CPU. Acer Nitro 5, 165 Hertz refresh rate, 300 nits, 100% DCI P3 color gamut, RTX 3070, which is gonna be 3070 Ti, which is gonna be excellent for esports gaming, and a Ryzen 7 6800H, which is not necessarily is going to be as good as the latest processors for esports gaming, but it would probably be pretty competitive with the Aorus 7's i5. Last but not least, I want to mention the MSI Katana 15, not because the display here is actually very good. The display here is actually not that good of an esports gaming display. It's got a bit of ghosting, it's only 250 nits, and it's 144 Hertz refresh rate, which if you're an esports junkie, you probably want more than 144 Hertz refresh rate. You probably want at least 240 is my recommendation if you can swing it. What I would actually recommend is buying an external monitor. So I went ahead and looked into some external monitors to give you an idea. RTX 4070 for $1159 is the most graphical power you can get in a gaming laptop for this price point. So you can see external monitors, you know, like this one starts at 129, you know, but if you wanted to go with a 360 Hertz, this 360 Hertz Alienware monitor is $449, or maybe this BenQ monitor. Here it is. We got the Aorus 7 Team Up Fight On. Here we go. We got ourselves like a little secondary layer, kind of another shell, and we got another box. I like the texturing on the box here. So this is a 230 watt brick, and that should be powerful enough to power this system at full performance levels. Got this nice foam casement, and there it is. It's got a nice finish to it. It feels honestly pretty, feels pretty solid initially here. Like the initial impressions of this laptop are very good. We got a nice large microfiber cloth. This is not a, this is like actual microfiber here. So it's a nice high quality microfiber, and this black laptop will need to be wiped down. It does have a tendency to gather fingerprints. So you're gonna want to keep this in your backpack or something so you can wipe it down occasionally. Tapping my fingernails makes me think this is a plastic top lid, but the feel and texture and rigidity of it makes me think it's metal. So I'm not honestly sure what material is made of, but if I were to guess, I would guess plastic. Notice how wide this laptop is and shallow. A big part of the reason why it's so wide, the minimal bezel display. And when you close this, it has a nice satisfying closing feel to like the laptop, and it's got a nice rubber edge around the edge of the display here. You can see it right here. This rubber edge just ensures that it gets a nice like airtight soft close to closing the laptop. Let's go and do a flex test and see how flexy this thing is. No flex at all in the right side. No flex. Minimal flex here in the middle, but honestly not much. No flex. Let's go to the keyboard. A bit of flex, a strong amount of flex here right in the middle, but I am pressing really hard. Normally you're not going to press that hard. Definitely some flex, not strong enough to where I think it would bother you as a user. None of the keys are making any weird sounds or rattling or are loose. A little bit of flex over here on the left. Mainly it just feels like I'm pushing down the rubber feet of the laptop. Okay, a little bit of flex here. Basically no flex. I love the rigidity of this laptop for the price. Like it feels a step up in terms of rigidity. So this hinge can be opened with one finger very easily. Overall, I think the hinge could be a little stiffer, but it feels good. And I generally like this type of hinge design where it's like inset into the bottom here and swings in and out. Again, it's hard to predict if the hinges are necessarily going to last over the course of like 5 or 10 years. And this does not go, that's as far back as the display goes. It does not lay flat. Let's go ahead and take the bottom of the laptop off. So to open this up, you're actually going to need a Torx T6 screw, which is a rare screwdriver head. If you need tools Link in the description to buying an iFixit toolkit, which is going to have everything you'll need to open this laptop up. That's what it looks like. Now we do have different size screws on this chassis, and this is very important. These screws here going into the middle are longer than these screws going into the front. If you put the longer screw in the front and torque it down, you may go through the motherboard or go through some important into the battery or something. Look at that internal layout. This gorgeous 99 watt-hour battery, left and right audio speakers, and the bottom of the chassis does have little vents over here on each side for these speakers. And these speakers are fairly large looking, at least this whole encasement is large. You know, the speaker here is pretty small, but the overall size of the main body speaker, if that thing is like a subwoofer in the back of that, we might get good quality sound out of this, or that just might be a plastic cover over nothing, I don't know. All right, so we've got our SSD here, and I'm not seeing a brand. We have our extra M.2 slot right here that's open, easily upgradable, double-sided SSD. We've got our Wi-Fi card over here on the right, which is an Intel AX 210 NGW. Nicety that it's not a MediaTek super budgety Wi-Fi module. So you can see we have DDR4 3200, but it is double-sided. So it is probably the faster version of DDR4 RAM. Our heat pipe layout is pretty interesting. We've got our CPU here with 3 shared heat pipes. Our GPU here has the VRMs covered with a metal plate, a dedicated heat pipe just to the GPU, and then of course we have our 3 shared heat pipes. So this GPU should have pretty ample coverage. Also, I want to point out that we've got some really nice ventilation. Look at the ventilation. There's you can see all the way through to the laptop, and I'd say the total cable length is about 10 feet, with the power adapter cable actually being a little more than 6 feet, and the main power cable being like 4.5 or so. All right, and we're gonna go ahead and see if Windows Hello is working. There we go. Windows Hello logged me in right away. Taking a look at the keyboard and trackpad. So if you want to adjust keyboard brightness, you got to use FN plus the space bar. You tap it 3 times to make it brighter, brighter, and then turn off. So brighter, brighter. That is currently the brightest keyboard setting right there. This is the same keyboard layout that Aorus has had on their laptops for so many years. There's been almost no update to this keyboard layout. The primary thing that I would say could be a nice improvement would be if they took these arrow keys and separated them down, like brought them down and then made this shift bar go all the way over. And it makes the arrow keys just easier to find if they're down a little bit. But I mean, ultimately, this is a great layout for typing and user experience because you get a full-size number pad that's not cramped. It's like very nicely spaced. On the escape key, we've got basically a max fan speed button. Then we got a sleep on F1, Wi-Fi off, brightness down, brightness up, your LCD monitor switching. So if you want to switch between different monitor plugins, yeah, F6 is to lock the laptop, F7 mute, volume down, volume up, lock your touchpad, disable touchpad, airplane mode. F12 is an AI button. Yeah, Aorus has been kind of pushing AI. I think that's just a bunch of marketing BS. You got a pause button, a delete button that alternates as insert and break, and print screen. You get a home, page up, page down, and an end key. So you get dedicated home and page up, page downs. These are a little bit of an odd position, but at least they have dedicated keys for those. So if you do a lot of typing, you can easily memorize where those are for quick taps. And then you have your full-size number pad, glass touchpad, a nice premium feature for an $1149 laptop. This glass touchpad, I think, is a good size, but is not as big as some of the newer designed models. Click feels good, but more importantly, since it's glass, it just feels more premium to use. This is not super bright. I can clearly read and see everything. Everything is illuminated quite well. In terms of brightness, intensity, it could be massively improved. If you want to control this keyboard, you can go to click on the laptop, general, go to RGB Fusion. And here is your keyboard key controls. And you have a bunch of different pre-builds. You got 8 different pre-builds here. In custom, this is what you get. You just get 3 different colors. This seems like a 3-zone keyboard, not per key RGB, if I'm being honest. And in the control software here, I'm not seeing per key functionality. I'm seeing, so this is the cycle mode. This is pulse. This is rainbow wave. All right. And you can change the speed to go faster, slower. You can do a static color, including white, if you just want to go more of a professional look. RGB wave, which is not all of the colors, it looks like. More like blue, purple, neon. RGB pulse. It's kind of just the same thing as regular pulse. RGB, that's what RGB is. It's just multicolored. I like the feel of the keyboard. I've done a lot of typing on these Aorus style keyboards. A little bit cramped compared to some, and it's not a mechanical keyboard. It does feel, I think, better than a membrane keyboard. And the functionality on this keyboard is good. Overall, it's a decent keyboard. Nothing special really, but it's highly functional and will work quite well for most people. I believe that Aorus also advertises something about like anti-ghosting per key rollover or something. So that way you have better gaming performance for pressing the keys on the keyboard. All right, so webcam quality is what you would expect in a gaming laptop. Is bad, is not very good. The details in this webcam are particularly mediocre. I can see very little detail on my hair. Look at how non-detailed this is. This is super low resolution here, but this is also an IR camera for Windows Hello. So Windows Hello is something that's very nice to have, and it oftentimes will make the camera quality worse than average. Okay, so if I go ahead and lock it and do a little test here with Windows Hello, it picks me up and logs me in very quickly. Only, you know, a second or two there. Headphone combo port, USB-A 3.2 Gen 2, which is, it's nice that these are both like the latest ports, but this could be Thunderbolt enabled, which would have been really nice. But at least you do have one USB-C on this laptop. Overall, the ports, yeah, not amazing. All right, that's definitely true. An upward facing Ethernet port, I like that. Easy to take this out if you need to take this, unplug it. HDMI 2.1 for high quality display output with a mini display port 1.4, again, high quality display output. And then another USB-A 3.2 Gen 2. So that's it. There's no ports on the back of the device. We just got this kind of reflective coating, kind of like the bicycle reflectors here is what this is, I think. There's no illumination coming from there. It's just reflecting. Let's move into our display test now. Okay, keep in mind that my Spider 5 Elite usually underestimates by about 7% compared to most other color checker tools out there for color gamut. If you were to measure this with like a X-Rite Pro or something like that, you'd probably get over 100% sRGB, around 81% Adobe, and around 82% of the P3 color gamut. That's overall pretty dang good for a gaming laptop. If you're looking for color experience during a gaming experience, being 100% sRGB to me is kind of like the baseline for a really good color experience. Obviously going up to 100% Adobe or P3 color gamut really amplifies the color experience to another level, but usually costs a lot more at the same time. The brightness, 341 nits. Let's go. All right, that's brighter than I thought it would be. The contrast ratio only being 920:1 is not quite as high as I would like. Usually, you know, a little bit better quality displays are, you know, over 1,000:1 on the contrast ratio. At least a lot of them this year have been over 1,000:1. But for a 360 hertz refresh rate display, these are great stats for doing, like I said, for doing esports gaming. 341 nits with over 100% sRGB and around a little over 80% of Adobe and P3 color gamut. So you get like a solid 1.5 thumbs up. This is the Aorus 7's display quality with like a very colorful palette going on. This is certainly like a very enjoyable amount of color from a gaming perspective. If you're a graphics designer, you could probably make this work as a bare minimum type of display. But usually I'd recommend higher color gamut displays for anyone that's doing video editing or Photoshop type of work. Backlight bleed, let's check it out. Not much. This laptop has almost no backlight bleed. I see a little bit here. I don't see it anywhere else on the display. Realtek audio console. Looks like this is our audio control application. If we go to the settings here, we have left-right audio balance. We also have equalizer effects that we can do. We can do powerful, we could do environment. Interesting. You can do some audio modifications here with the environment. Let's try Peter Spacey roar. Yeah, not amazing bass. When the bass was by itself, it wasn't bad. And then when the mids came in and the highs came in, it didn't seem that loud to me. Whoa, equalizer makes a huge difference. Wow, it sounds so much better when I turned all of these just did a custom EQ and just set everything to max. Everything's louder, get more bass, got more mids, got more highs, got more everything. Wow, these speakers sound so much better when the software is tuned better. Like it went from being like, I don't know, a 6.5 speaker system to being like, I don't know, 8.5, I don't know, 8.4 or something. It's so much better now. Like there's more bass, there's more mids, there's more highs, there's more clarity. Okay, so these speakers, they were hitting like 93 decibels in the faded out half-life, which is some of the highest decibels that we've measured. Overall, there's a good amount of volume. There's definitely some bass in there. Let me try Speeder Spacey roar one more time. I would give, so in terms of like bass, clarity, and highs, I'd probably give them like an 8.2, but they're so loud. I'm giving them like a little bit of bonus points because they're such loud speakers. So I'm gonna give it 8.4 overall for the speaker quality on the Aorus. And this is an $1149 laptop. That's a very high score for a cheaper laptop. Very nice. Let's move into our fan testing now. All right, so we gotta talk Gigabyte Control Center. So this is how you control your Aorus laptop. There's the general tab. This allows you to enter creator mode, turbo mode, gaming mode, meeting mode, power saving, silence mode. All right. There's also panel color calibration. You can set it to be different color palette profiles. So this is like your white balance. You can adjust your keyboard backlight in here to be brighter or dimmer. You also have your keyboard effect, which can be white, manual, or RGB, at least from this section. If you want to do your full keyboard control, it's under RGB Fusion. You can enable, disable Bluetooth, change your screen brightness, change your charge mode. So under customize, you can set how much battery you're going to charge the laptop up to. So under customize, like if you want the battery to only go to 60%, you can leave it right here, or you can go up to like 80%, which is right here. So that way your lithium ion battery will last longer. I usually recommend 80% if you're going to use battery frequently, unless you know you're going to run out of juice often. Okay, so you have your GPU mux switch right here. Okay, so NVIDIA graphics output mode or Intel graphics output mode. So Intel graphics output mode will let you switch between the integrated GPU and the dedicated GPU, but it's not going to give you maximum GPU performance in CPU-bound games. You're going to be a little bit more CPU limited, and given that this is an esports laptop, I love that this has a mux switch. That was one of the big problems with the Aorus 17H or Aorus 17 from a couple of years ago. It did not have a mux switch. Aorus added a mux switch this year. Definitely needed for this type of laptop. We have a night light option, which should make you all, yeah, it makes everything yellow. NVIDIA control panel key switch here. You've got power mode, Gigabyte high performance, Gigabyte balanced, and power saver. We're going to do high performance, I believe here. OSD switch, on-screen display switch. I'm not sure what that is. Turn wireless on and off, and your volume control with a mute button. So that's everything there. You've got, of course, the main thing here that you're going to want to definitely be playing with. Make sure your mux switch is set to NVIDIA graphics mode if you want maximum performance. And then you're probably going to want to go either into turbo mode or gaming mode. We'll have to see which one provides us the most performance. We're going to start with turbo mode. AI boost. Okay, so there's an AI boost button here on this tab. So if I do AI boost, that's just AI mode. There is no additional settings here. Like you just letting AI handle it. But when you set turbo mode, that turns off the AI boost. And now the fans, for example, are ramping up. So right now in turbo mode, we are getting 95 watts of power to the GPU, 18, 17 watts of power to the CPU, but 4.2 gigahertz on the CPU. So we're getting good performance from the CPU, even at 18 watts. Our temps are very good here initially, but we'll have to see if they go up higher or not. And we're just there, we're doing over 100 watts of power right there. Excellent temps so far. If we go to creator mode, what happens? Creator mode, the fans, gone. There's also this AI GPU boost, NVIDIA dynamic boost. That gives us more GPU wattage. Okay, so this is AI mode enabled. AI mode. Our temps are climbing up. There's no fan noise right now, by the way. It is, okay, now the fan noise is just coming back a little bit. Turning off AI boost and just going to gaming mode. Like hearing the fans build up, and then when I switch modes here, the fans like die. And then it's like the soft, like look at our temps. Our temps are climbing really fast because the fans are not running. 104 watts right now. Gaming mode giving us the most juice to the GPU, looks like. All right, let's try meeting mode. 80 watts, 15. Super interesting. Let's go to power saving silence mode. Power saving silent mode, knocking our GPU wattage down to 80. I am still hearing the fans a little bit. Our fan control, our fan control is separate. Power mode, this is the fan curve for power mode. Eco mode, this is the fan curve. It's a little less aggressive. Normal, pretty similar. Power is a little bit more aggressive. Turbo, the turbo fan mode is max fan. So we're gonna start with max fans for our noise testing now that we've basically tested all this. And you can set your own custom fan profile too. You can also do your own curve specifically. Whoa, this is kind of funky fan curve. So now that we're in turbo mode, we're doing 105 watts to the GPU. Our stock or ambient room noise base is 41.5 decibels today. 56.4 decibels for a max fan. That's not super loud for a max fan. We are now down to 76 on the GPU, 66, 69, 70 on the CPU, which is excellent. That's in a good range. Especially considering we were just much hotter because we were switching the fan profiles. I think the temps realistically on this are going to continue going down for a little while. I think what we're seeing now is more the sustained temps. I guess down to 74, 75. We are going to change our fan profile to normal. I definitely hear the fans, but they're not super loud. We've got 77 degrees on the GPU, 74 on the CPU. So our temps are still in a good range. We're not near thermal throttling by any means. 50.6 decibels, pulling 95 watts and 77 degrees to that GPU. Let's try Eco, power savings mode, and Eco fans. 80 watts of power going through that GPU, 39% still on the fans. They've not gone up past 39% yet in Eco fan mode. 43.5 decibels in this. Basically, this is like silent gaming mode settings. That's basically why I would describe these fan profile settings as. That is a quiet gaming laptop. That right there is still good performance from the CPU and GPU perspective. This is excellent performance. And if you were to undervolt and overclock this GPU, I think you could probably get near full levels of GPU performance out of this GPU. Okay, so taking a look, we got 63 degrees on the GPU, 51 on that CPU. Starting in max fans obviously gives us a thermal advantage compared to doing thermal load testing on a continuous basis when we're switching between the different fan profiles in particular. A nice GPU boost clock of 2490 gets us close to peak GPU boost clocking. GPU 69 degrees, CPU 60 degrees, 95 watts right now to the GPU. This is basically near peak potential performance for an RTX 4060. 10,501, which is an excellent score for an RTX 4060 without any overclocking. 10,300 for the CPU. That's excellent for an i5 CPU. So it's time to run Cinebench R23. Let's check out our cores here. We have only 4 P cores. Okay, so our P cores are doing 4.2 gigahertz, our E cores 3.1 gigahertz. Our temps are excellent so far during this initial workload boost. 76 degrees on the CPU package, 64 on the cores, and package power peaking at 87 watts of power, 82 watts, 55 watts now. So the initial burst appears to be around an 85 watt power limit. Our long power limit is going to be 55 watts on this CPU. 64 degrees, 57 degrees, 55 watts for sustained workloads is not going to give us maximum performance on this CPU. So we ended up getting 12,674. Which is not as high as what we have seen on some of the other laptops. We've also seen a lot higher temps on some of the other laptops too. But I'm curious, if we were to go to general and do creator mode might actually give us the most CPU performance with this laptop. Let's try it. 4.2 gigahertz on the P cores, 3.1 gigahertz on the E cores. And we are doing 80 watts again for our CPU, but let's see what's sustained over the long haul. I wonder if it's going to be able to stay at that wattage level. No, it is still dropping down 52.4 watts. And this is lower than it has to. Like this CPU could definitely be running a bit spicier than this and still have excellent temps. Look at that, 57 degrees and 63 degrees. 57 on the core, 63 on the package. So excellent overall temps for this system. 11,899. Okay, so 12,197. This is going to be very similar to what we get in a 10-minute test. That's your CPU performance. It's good, but it's below average. It's time to move to Apex Legends time. Okay, so you can see we're at 1920 by 1080. We have everything else on high settings. We are getting 150 to 160 right now. Basically being GPU bound, 95, 80 watts of power, 50 watts going to that CPU. So the CPU is really tanking a lot of juice right now. It feels very responsive considering that it's I'm only getting 160 FPS, but the screen smoothness seems smoother than that, honestly. Like I'm actually not kidding. It feels smoother than the 160. I think that's because of the high refresh rate 360 hertz display. I don't know. Let's go ahead and set everything to low now. But it looks like we're actually going to be getting about 240 FPS in this title. But you can see it's extremely fluid. Definitely more fluid than your average gaming laptop. Okay, so we averaged 268. Our 1% low, we've been having these little extra blips here and there, reducing our 1% low. I feel like our 1% low most of the time is higher than 95, but keep having these little blips. I wonder if that's because of the the i5 processor. So gaming mode, turbofan mode. Our GPU wattage went down. We were doing 80 watts before, but our CPU now is pulling higher. Maintaining good temps. I would say the CPU could be a little lower, but overall very good. This is excellent performance right now. You know, it's interesting that we're only getting 56 for our 1% low. It does not feel that way to me at all right now. I'm not really noticing any frame time glitches. Like, look at our frame time graph. It's so smooth. And things are feeling very good all around. Our 1% lows really are not as high as I would like to see, though. 1080p. Graphics quality currently is set to high, no VSync, with 4x anti-aliasing, 8x anisotropic filtering, improved clarity is off, beta experimental sharpening, bloom. So everything is set to on. It's like high settings basically right now. High settings, we're doing 300 FPS right now. Wow, the CPU and GPU, it's amazing how little wattage it's pulling to be able to push this high of frame rate right now. Let's try the low settings and see if we get any improved. 400 FPS, 380. So we're hitting 360 FPS right now in Valorant. Okay, last life. Okay, 327 FPS on average, almost 360. That is just so good. This is just the stock high settings. Currently 400 to 500 FPS range. Man, I remember playing this game on a CRT monitor and a desktop that didn't even have a GPU on it. It was just using the integrated GPU, 25 to 30 FPS. I was like in junior high and it was my game. All right, I had to play. Averaging 382. Let's pop into a Dust 2 match real quick and try to shoot a couple people of what we were seeing. So right now in CSGO, 260 FPS. He did. Okay, so we're getting in the 250 to 300 FPS range here in CSGO. Let's do very low. Okay, so now we're doing 380, 360, 300. We're hitting our screen refresh rate right now. 400. We raised it. Okay, so now we're getting 600. 400 FPS down here. Dang, okay. Well, oh, well, that's bad timing. So right now we're at 1080p. So we have anti-aliasing on high with shadows enabled, shadow resolution, ultra. So these are like ultra settings, I think. So we're at ultra settings in BattleBit Remastered, and we're getting 450 FPS. Look at all these players. There's so many players in this game. It is crazy. So smoke's going out, and we're still getting 250 FPS with smokes on the screen. We are killing it right now. 273 FPS on ultra settings. Let's go ahead and switch some settings around and see what we get on low settings. Our average doesn't seem to be going up very much. I'm guessing it's because we're CPU bound, so therefore lowering the settings is not really giving us a performance boost. I'm guessing the RTX 4060 is like overkill for this game. We're using best looking settings right now, so max settings. DX11 with NVIDIA Reflex enabled. Oh no, we're not. We're not maxing FPS right now, but we're barely utilizing. Yeah, 120 is. We're getting kind of max FPS cap. So right now 187 FPS on ultra settings. Our temps are also pretty good. Let's go ahead and try low settings for our video settings now. Wow. So FPS didn't really change much, but 180 is still quite good. You know, I think we're basically being CPU bound, so I don't think you're going to see much gains by going lower settings. Really, if you want to get more performance in Dota 2, what you're going to have to do is get a better CPU, basically. So that's Dota 2, basically 180 FPS. If you're a Dota 2 player, getting a 360 hertz display is not going to really benefit you much, I don't think. No VSync, unlimited frame rate, DirectX 12. I've already set everything to low with 100% render resolution. 240 FPS right now, like it's very stuttery, 1% lows. Always here in the intro island. Oh, performance lower graphic fidelity. Apply. It's interesting, the FPS does not seem very high or much higher than it was in DX12 mode. All this whole map area is completely shifted around on us. Interesting, 148 FPS up here in the sky. We're getting also a few stutters as well. Right now averaging 235 FPS in certain areas. It's gonna be like in the 200 FPS range, maybe some areas only be 150. And then other areas you'll be in the 300 in Fortnite with this laptop. Okay, that worked out. See, right there we're doing 300 FPS. So there's definitely lots of moments where you're gonna be able to push your FPS. Theory, like right now we are CPU bound to the max. So again, if you want higher FPS in Fortnite, what you're gonna need is a higher end CPU. Let's go into graphics, ultra settings, God of War, so our first AAA title that we're testing today. DLSS on quality. So let's see if we get typical performance. I believe we will, seeing that we're hitting 2490 on the GPU boost clock with 90 watts of power, 45 watts going to that CPU. Very hefty CPU wattage in this i5, but our temps are staying in there in good ranges. We're definitely getting a little bit of frame time stuttering there. 67 FPS, 25 for our 1% lows. Gives us excellent all-around performance, and if you wanted a more high FPS experience, you can just go in here and go to original graphics settings. Now you're getting in the over 100 in the 120 range, which in a AAA title like this is perfect. You don't really need more than that for a AAA title. So, I mean, if you're a AAA gamer, I don't really necessarily recommend this laptop to you because you could get maybe a higher color gamut display. We are in Ray Tracing Ultra with DLSS on quality. Frame generation enabled, DLSS on quality. This is how I would recommend running this game. 19 for our 1% low. That's a little bit worrying. I saw one big stutter, but our frame time is looking much better. Our 1% lows are probably going to come up a lot higher. We have another little frame time stutter right there. 72 degrees on the GPU, 85 watts, hitting that 2590 boost clock, which is the optimal boost clock range, considering we have no overclock applied. If we applied an overclock, we could probably get close to 2700 megahertz on that GPU. Good, again, good CPU and GPU temps, both staying below 80. I guess CPU kind of spiking up above 80 for a moment there. But 45 watts is a high amount of wattage in a dual GPU CPU usage. 70 watts. Wow. Very high CPU wattage for an i5 CPU. And notice we got some frames time stutters there too. So 91.1 FPS for our average FPS, which is perfect. Okay, so keep in mind, Ray Tracing Ultra, frame generation enabled. Our 1% lows are looking good so far. So 92 FPS, 32 for a 1% low. Let's just do high settings with DLSS on quality. Frame generation enabled. All right, so now we're doing 162 FPS. So 150 FPS approximately with high settings. Let's go to low settings with DLSS on balanced. 197. Our 1% low has not been very good though. That's the only downside. We're getting occasional stutters. So in the 90 to 100 range with ray tracing on ultra settings, 150 with high settings, and 188 on low. DLSS on quality, ray tracing is on enabled, and we're in ultra settings, okay? Our frame time graph is not perfectly smooth. We're getting these occasional blips here and there. We'll turn off ray tracing and we'll go to low settings. Okay, 260 FPS. I'm about to die. Ooh, health. That was not very much health. We got him off his rocker though. Some big frame time stutters there as we were like kind of loading in this new mode for this guy. Some more 1% low stutters. I can't help but think that that's related to the CPU. CPU pulling 55 watts, running at 83 degrees. So there you go, 300 FPS on low settings. Honestly, low settings still look pretty dang good. So you can see we're on all ultra settings with low, ray tracing enabled. Okay, Hogwarts in Hogsmeade here, we are very CPU bound. We're also running into maybe our memory limit here at 15 gigs of memory. That may cause a little bit of stuttering. And then we already have our texture set to low. We probably could put our textures to medium though in this game. Overall, 84 FPS, 37 for our 1% lows. That's pretty good in Hogsmeade. Hogsmeade being where all the NPCs are and a bunch of textures, very complicated area of Hogwarts. Very good gameplay, very minimal hard stutters on our second run through. 7834 is, I think, above average for a 4060, especially considering this has an i5 CPU. So now let's go ahead and just kind of optimize. Now that we've done our test exactly how I recommend it, we're going to go ahead and optimize some settings. We're going to change our textures to medium, which look a lot better than low textures. And then we turned off ray tracing as well. And now look at us, 120 FPS. Now this is like 120 FPS. Great gaming experience with a couple of stutters here in Hogsmeade. If you run outside of Hogsmeade, it'll be a lot better, a lot smoother FPS. So you can see we're running outside of the world now, and our 1% lows, our FPS has gone up. We're at 130 FPS, and our 1% lows are not as bad at 45. Ultra preset DLSS on quality, that's correct. Okay, so as we're turning, we saw some pretty gnarly 1% low stutters there. We're getting a lot of little choppas. Hey, I'm impressed that the CPU is doing 55 watts right now and our temps are still good. 83 degrees on the CPU is excellent for this much wattage going through the system. 72 watts on the GPU. So we are CPU bound a little bit, but overall we're seeing basically power limited CPU is good. CPU bound game with almost 100% GPU utilization is good. Overall, I'm anticipating Dead Space to play pretty dang well without any issues on ultra settings, which is where you want to be. 25 for a 1% low is not ideal, even though I'm not really seeing stutters. Like, it looks smooth to my eyes when I'm turning the camera and stuff. I don't know if Afterburner's not reading things correctly or something. I don't know. Our graphics is going to be ultra settings, but our textures on medium. So a pretty steady frame time graph with occasional little blips here. Overall, 111 FPS. I mean, come on, that's dang good, right? 79 watts of power, 55 watts to the CPU. So when the CPU is pulling 55 watts, the GPU maxes at 80 watts with this laptop. It's time to do our audio acoustics adjustment. Okay, so in the dashboard, we're going to go to, or sorry, in general, we're going to go to power saving silent mode. All right, and our fans, we're going to go to eco mode. We're basically down to 43 decibels, right? Approximately when we were doing it before. And now I'm going to turn the speakers up. Our CPU only 15 watts. We are being CPU bound pretty hard right now. Our GPU not really giving us the full wattage because of how CPU bound we are in silent mode. But the FPS is still extremely playable at 70 FPS. And our temps are also excellent. Doing 47, 42. This is not good enough. We're going to need more juice. I think the issue is the CPU. CPU only pushing 15 watts is just not enough. We could go gaming mode and just leave it on eco fan mode. So maybe it'll be not as loud. That is better, but not great still. Still getting some stutters, like not super smooth FPS. All right, gaming mode with turbo fans. Interesting. So when we switch to turbo fans, look at that. Our power limits rise up big time. And bam, our FPS so much better. You're gonna need to be in you can't be at least in eco mode. Eco mode in the fan profile really kneecaps your system. Let's go to, all right, so power mode. Power mode is like auto fans, but we get high performance. So if you want quieter fans and not max fans, this power mode's the way to go. Our temps are coming down there in the low 80s, high 70s right now. I like that there's options here. The fans are not as loud, but I gotta say that if you're after a quiet system that can game really well, the current fan profiles are not. Maybe if you do a custom fan profile, you could get it to be better. But right now the fans are pretty loud. I gotta say the speakers are pretty underwhelming as well. Like I'm on max volume right now with the speakers, and it doesn't. I can't hear it that well. We're currently doing about 120 FPS during the opening scene. Usually it goes down a little bit from there. But still excellent performance. The frame time graph being pretty smooth with occasional little blips here and there. Hitting about 90 watts of performance, 85 watts of performance on that GPU, being mostly GPU bound, but the CPU just providing enough performance to make us GPU bound. We're definitely pushing that CPU pretty hard at the same time. So I think this is a pretty good pairing, this i5 CPU with this RTX 4060. In terms of gaming performance, you're at least getting close. Like, you're getting close to being GPU bound, at least in these GPU bound games. You're not underperforming with the GPU at least, but 117.47 for our median FPS. Very, very smooth. Min FPS being 87 shows you that our frame times generally are pretty dang good. Let's set it to Ray Tracing Ultra to start with. DLSS on quality. Display. 1080p frame generation is enabled. 80 FPS range. Witcher 3 being a typically very stuttery game, especially in new zones. 79 for our 1% low. I am seeing a bit of judder though. Like, it doesn't seem as smooth or as good for some reason. The performance is very good right now though. 88 FPS, 39 for our 1% lows. I mean, now it seems to be better. I don't know. It seems like when I was running through the city there though, it was not that good. All right, so 88. 43 for our 1% lows. If we go into our graphics settings, flip ray tracing off, 150 FPS. Interesting. Our 43 for our 1% lows is not ideal, but this is very good gameplay. Our VRAM is not maxed. Our regular RAM is not maxed. If you wanted to go for high FPS gaming, let's see what we get on performance mode. Let's try performance and low settings. All right, so 240. Is there a frame cap at 240? 240 FPS right now in The Witcher 3 on low settings. This game still looks pretty dang good on low settings, by the way. But like, there's certain things that don't look as good. Like these guys are kind of loading in and they're pretty low resolution. A lot of the textures don't look as good on low settings, so I wouldn't really recommend low settings. So like if you do like ultra, and then you do, I would do DLSS on quality as well. I don't know, let's try turning off frame gen. Yeah, that's better, I'm pretty sure. So this is, it's weird, you know, we're still getting 100. Yeah, frame gen is messed up right now. It's causing these weird inconsistent frame times, making the game not look good for some reason. Top deals versus the competition. This thing has some great value for the money, considering it's a 300, it's one of the cheapest 360 hertz displays out there. There's technically one $50 cheaper, but it has an RTX 4050. It's another Aorus laptop. This one's way better than the Aorus 15 for the money. This has a more RAM. This has an RTX 4060 instead of 4050. That's a big upgrade. And then I don't know, I like this chassis. I like this overall design this has. Windows Hello on this was a big surprise when I pulled this out. I was not expecting Windows Hello. That's a huge value add at $1149. Like a nice premium feature to have. Sadly, I do not believe this is per key RGB lighting. On the keyboard, it is only a 3-zone backlight lighting. But we had some nice premium features on the inside. When we took this thing apart, it wasn't too hard to take apart. You got upgradable RAM. You could slap in 32 gig sticks if you wanted. You got an open M.2 slot, so you got some nice upgradability. A 99 watt hour battery in here, very rare to see a 99 watt hour battery in a budget mid-range laptop. Usually they're in like the 80 watt hour range, but sometimes people undercut those down to like 60 or 50 or 70 watt hours in the budget-ish laptops. And to see a 99 watt hour battery at $1149 is also very rare. So I love to see these premium features that Aorus are including in an entry budget range-ish laptop. I guess, what's this? Low mid-range, I guess, is probably where I would officially classify this. Over $1,000, under 1,200. That's like high budget, low mid range, right in that range. So let's go in order. Power adapter, got a nice 10-foot range on it, 240 watt power adapter, Chicone, good all around power adapter, no issues. The power adapter does sit here on the side, could block the fan exhaust or the ports, depending on which angle you flip the power adapter. You can also make it go up, which is probably what I'd recommend doing if you do get this laptop. The ports on this laptop are pretty bad. They're not good ports. They're one of the worst port selections in terms of numbers of ports that we've seen in any gaming laptop so far in 2023, especially for a 17-inch laptop. This is very minimal ports selection. But basically what that means, so you've got a USB-C, 2 USB-As, an HDMI 2.1, and a mini display port. That's it, right? And a network port. You got a network port too. Literally only 3 and then 4. So 7 total ports. Usually laptops are having like 9 ports. And the fact that there's no Thunderbolt 4 support here is also a little bit of a bummer. So that means no eGPU support down the line. And it's a USB-C 3.2. Now there is a mini display port, which helps with external monitors, and HDMI 2.1, which, so the ports on here are high quality ports aside from the lacking of a Thunderbolt 4 port. If you're gonna get this laptop, you're probably gonna wanna get a USB-C dock to be able to use it with an external monitor, keyboard, mouse, and all that, and all your peripherals that you're gonna wanna use with it. If you don't have that many peripherals, you could also be just fine, you know. No big deal. If you only need 2 USB-As and 1 USB-C, then this laptop will be fine. But like me, I am like almost always using 3 USB-As on my laptop on the fly, because that's what I use for live streaming and everything. So I really need 3 USB-As as a minimum. So this would not work for me, but it's going to depend on you and your use case, what you need. You could try to use some kind of like internal Bluetooth 5.0 mouse or something, so you don't have to use a one of the ports for a mouse. There's ways you can play around with it to deal with this port situation, but it's not ideal. Notice the keyboard also turns off its backlight after 30 seconds. I did not see anywhere in the settings to change that. The keyboard, speaking of the keyboard, the backlight could definitely be brighter. One of the big cons of this laptop, the keyboard's not that bright. It's only a 3-zone backlight, but it does look good in the dark. It's very easy to see every key, read every key. All the secondary functions are lit up. That's excellent. And the keyboard itself has a great layout and great functionality and a good key feel. It's not mechanical. It's a chiclet style, better than a membrane keyboard in my opinion. And it's good all around layout. Not perfect. There's definitely some ways that they could have improved the layout. But I've liked the Aorus keyboards for a long time, and I've used them extensively when I owned and used Aorus laptops as my main laptop for several years. And this is still the same keyboard layout as that. Webcam quality was very low detail, but it's Windows Hello enabled. The display, 342 nits, and I'm doing this all off the top of my head, 920:1 contrast ratio. I believe those numbers are correct. Very good display, 360 hertz refresh rate, and we did see in multiple esports games today actually being able to hit 360 FPS with this laptop. So if you're a Valorant player, CSGO player, those games in particular definitely can hit it. League of Legends could hit it. Dota 2 cannot hit because CPU limitations give us about 185 FPS basically, at least in a mid-range. Looking at the creeps fighting in mid is about 185 FPS, even on low settings. So you can run Dota 2 on ultra settings and get 185 FPS, still very good. BattleBit Remastered, we saw in certain situations 400 plus FPS, but on average, I think we were doing like 250-ish on the FPS there. Fortnite, we were seeing in like the 230, 240 FPS, but in certain situations, in certain areas of Fortnite, upwards of over 300 FPS. So there are certain situations in Fortnite where you're gonna be able to take advantage of the 360 hertz refresh rate. But most importantly, regardless of whether you're actually displaying 360 FPS to the display at one time, you are getting a very fast response rate. And even if you're doing 240 FPS, you're technically 360 might give you a slightly faster window to display the image, but a really, really fast 240 hertz refresh rate will be very competitive with this anyway. So if the games you play typically don't get more than 240 FPS, like Apex Legends, I think we were doing around 240-ish FPS on low settings here. Like a 240 hertz refresh rate display won't make that big of a difference between a 240 and a 360. Plus, Apex Legends is capped to 300 FPS. Many games are capped to 200, 250, or 300 FPS. So you really got to know that your game that you want to play can really take advantage of the 360 hertz display if you really want to make this worth it, right? Like versus say buying a QHD resolution display instead. Thermally, this thing on Max fans, great thermals overall, but when we went into silent mode, the fan noise was very minimal, but in Last of Us, it was not giving the CPU enough juice to achieve playable frame rates. So we had to go back to a higher power mode to get playable frame rates. And in some of the recent reviews I've done, like on the Nitro 16, the Strix G16, we saw the Omen 16, all of those games, all of those gaming laptops have pretty competitive-ish hardware, but they have Ryzen CPUs in some of those. And those CPUs and GPUs are able to actually game really well at low wattage and low fan noise. So like Last of Us was perfectly playable, even when the laptop was very silent. This laptop, you'd probably want to use headphones with anyway, because the onboard speakers, which we're about to get to the speaker test anyway, the onboard speakers are not very good for displaying the game audio. It was weird. Like in the music test, we had much better audio coming from the speakers when we had the EQ dialed up, very loud volume, a bit tinny, not super clear, and not super amazing bass necessarily, but the high volume made me give this thing like an 8.2 and then bump it to 8.4 because of the high volume. So it was pretty good speakers in the music test, but when I was actually playing games, I could not hear the game audio very well over the fan noise, especially when under max fans. And then we couldn't get playable frame rates on the silent mode. So really, if you're going to want to be a headset gamer for this laptop mainly, or just be okay with having mediocre audio quality for your games, or use an external speaker system, you could use that too. An external speaker system like with a, USB-C dock or audio out, that's another possible solution. Cinebench R23, only about 12,000, also not very good, below average compared to most of the laptops of this year. And TimeSpy was very good. TimeSpy, we had good gaming CPU performance and GPU performance, 10,500, I believe, with no overclock at all. Probably could push this thing close to 11,000 with an overclock, maybe a little bit more. All right, let's talk AAA gaming performance. Cyberpunk 2077, God of War, Hogwarts, Dead Space, great performance in basically all of the AAA games had great performance, but if you want high FPS gaming performance, Doom Eternal, all these games, you're pretty much going to want to turn down a few settings, maybe even go to like medium or low settings if you want high frame rate FPS, like over 100, 150, 200 FPS, which this laptop can actually do that if you go down to medium or low settings, which is really cool to see at $1,149, right? Like that's like kind of like the part that's like in my mind, I'm thinking this is more like a $1,500 laptop given the premium special features that this has. But yeah, so what are the anti-premium special features that this has? Well, this is, I believe, an all plastic build, which is, you know, it feels high quality. Like the material feels good and it feels fairly rigid with minimal flex. The hinge is pretty strong. It could be a little stronger, only a little bit of wobble. And most importantly, I love the design of the minimal bezel of this laptop. It is such a minimal bezel on this laptop. It's mind-blowing to me how minimal bezel this is. The design, it makes the whole thing like that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with my Blade 18. The Blade 18 I have has almost no bezel to it. And so does this laptop. It has the same ethos in terms of design, making this a 17-inch laptop that has a much smaller form factor, much narrower form factor than almost all the other laptops for this year. Even like 15-inch laptops have a deeper profile this year than this guy because of how narrow bezel this guy is. It's not a small laptop by any means. It is also about an inch thick, the display being the thickest part of the laptop, which is kind of, or you know, almost as thick as the bottom of the laptop. It's very odd, but I'm guessing that's because of the 360 hertz display on this laptop being, must be a thicker panel or require thicker mounting or something. I don't know. From a esports gaming perspective on a budget, I feel like this is a great option. Gamer that's not an esports gamer, there are a few drawbacks here, right? Like you don't have the premium speaker quality. You don't have G-Sync, which if you're a AAA gamer, G-Sync becomes more important because oftentimes you're going to go to those lower FPS targets where screen tearing is more likely to occur. So the fact that this doesn't have a great balance of fan noise and gaming performance in CPU-bound games is a problem, I think. You might be able to wiggle around that with doing custom fan profile curves though in the software. Did not spend enough time with this laptop. Might still be able to salvage the fan noise versus performance issue, especially depending on the game. If it's a very GPU bound game, it should be no problem. If you're an esports gamer, this is probably one of the top laptops to consider under $1,200. Probably my number one pick for an esports gamer under $1,200. Like it's excellent for an esports gaming laptop. Certain games, like I said, for Warzone 2 that focus on CPU, multi-core performance, or Battlefield 2042, those types of games, not really going to perform very well on this machine because it doesn't have very many P cores, only 4 P cores. So really depends on which esports game you're playing, but most esports games only use 1 or 2 threads or minimal threads. And this thing has excellent performance when you're only using a handful of threads. Only has 4 P cores anyway. So, and then the GPU, obviously plenty enough juice to play esports games, and many of the esports games are playable at over 300 FPS. For a AAA gamer, I don't think this would not be my top pick. Probably not even in my top 5 for a AAA game. Well, maybe. I mean, this, like I said, this has a number of premium features to it that a lot of other gaming laptops at the $1,200 price point don't have. Like, you know, this does have a mux switch, which is important for esports, but more importantly, this does have Windows Hello, minimal bezel design, good thermals all around, but it's not for this person that is fan noise sensitive, not for the person who craves having awesome speakers or needs an awesome webcam. I want to mention that the trackpad, the glass trackpad, is also above average for the price point. A lot of laptops around the $1,200 price point this year have plastic touchpads, and this is a glass trackpad, so that's also excellent. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Brandon, out.